Hit it, hit it.
Hello and welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel. I'm Marley Bird, proud spokesperson for Red Heart Yarns. In this video, I'm going to show you how to fix a mistake in your seed stitch. It's really simple. All you need to do is grab a crochet hook that is at least the size of the needles you're using or a size smaller, and grab the mistake in your knitting, and I'm going to show you how to get it fixed. As you look down here, you can see I have a nice little swatch of seed stitch going on, and there is an obvious mistake right here and right here. As you know, seed stitch is supposed to be alternating knits and purls within the column and alternating knits and purls along the row. By doing that, you get this really great textured look that resembles like a checkerboard, right? Where the knits are your black squares and your knits are your red squares and your purls are your black squares. Something like that. So when we come up here and we see, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of knits on top of each other, or a bunch of these V's where it's no longer in this checkerboard kind of effect, we know that there's a mistake there. Now, those of you who have not been knitting very long might be thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to rip back down to this point to fix those mistakes. That's not true. I'm going to show you how we can work across this row to where the mistake is, drop the stitch down, and then pick it up and carry it back up in the correct orientation. It's not scary. Let me show you how to do it. First off, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work in my pattern, which is seed stitch, over to where the mistake is. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm looking at a purl, so I'm going to go ahead and knit that stitch, purl the next one, knit, purl, knit. And now I'm over here to where this problem is, right? So there's a bunch of knit stitches all in a row. And I know that it needs to be a knit and a purl and a knit and a purl, or vice versa, whichever the way the stitch needs to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, and I'm not worried about this working yarn because I'm not using it, right? It's still attached to the stitch over here on my right hand needle. We're going to deal with this stitch. I'm going to let that stitch fall off my left hand needle. Don't panic, it's okay, we can fix this. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my crochet hook and I'm going to start to let that stitch ladder down. Now this is going to look like a run in your pantyhose, okay? Where there's this stitch, it's fallen off, we've let it fall off, and we're going to have all of the stitches that are creating that, or all the strings that are creating that stitch, come undone. Okay, so I'm just coming all the way down here to this purl bump, because for me, if I can get down to where there's a purl bump, I can easily count up from there and go, okay, the next stitch is a knit, the next stitch is a purl, the next stitch is a knit, the next stitch is a purl. So I'm down here where this purl bump is, and I have my stitch, it's right there. I'm going to put my stitch on my crochet hook. Can you see that? I'm just putting the stitch directly into my crochet hook. Now I'm going to set this down so you can see what's going on. We have all of these strings right here, right? Those are what are called ladders. Those strings actually represent the string that was in that stitch as it was going up the rows. So if we have let this stitch fall down the ladder, all we have to do now is have this stitch climb back up the ladder. What's important is that we have the runs of the ladder in the correct position, meaning when we purl, we have our yarn in front of our needles, correct? We have our yarn in front of our needles, and then we purl our stitch. When we knit, we have our yarn behind our needles, go into the stitch, yarn over and pull through, correct? So when we knit, our yarn is behind. When we purl, our yarn is in front. The same thing goes for the ladders of the stitch. If we want a stitch to be a purl, we have to put the ladder in front of that stitch. If we want a stitch to be a knit, we have to put the ladder in back of that stitch. So here we go. As we look down here, I'm going to just pick this up and I'm going to put my left hand middle finger right there just so that the runs are all resting on my finger. The purpose of doing this is so that, one, I can see all the different runs. Two, I can make sure that they're all in order from the bottom one and then it goes to the next, to the next, to the next, that I'm not accidentally going to get them out of order as I'm going up the ladder. I'm going to take my hook, and knowing that the stitch on my hook right now is a purl because it shows that purl bump. Can you see that? I know that the stitch I need to make next is a knit. So when I knit, my yarn is in back, so I'm making sure my bottommost run is in back of my hook. I'm going to go underneath the run, and then I'm going to pull it right through that loop. Those of you who are crocheters out there, this is just like a slip stitch. I just grabbed some yarn and pulled it through the loop. So now I have a new loop on my hook, which is my stitch still, it's just up one more row. Now, knowing that my next stitch should be a purl, because remember it goes purl, knit, I have to have my next run in front of this stitch. So for me, what I like to do is I will take my hook out, take the next run and put it in front of that stitch, see that? And then put my hook back into my loop. Can you see that? Now here's something important. When you put your hook back into your loop, you want to make sure that you have not twisted that stitch on accident, okay? So if I were to put my hook back into this stitch like that, see how the bottom legs of my stitch are twisted? That's not good. I don't want them twisted because then I have a twisted stitch. That's not what I want. So I want to make sure that when I put my hook into my stitch, it's not twisted. Now here's a little tip too. We have our yarn in front, just like when we purl. And when I put my hook in, you'll notice I'm putting my hook in just like this, very similar to when we purl, correct? Just one of those little things. So when you put it in there, what I'm going to have you do is go underneath the yarn and then grab that yarn and bring it through that loop just like before. Now I have a purl stitch. Can you see? So we had a purl, we made a knit, we just made a purl. The next stitch needs to be a knit. So once again, I'm going to take my hook out to reposition it, to put it over here so that it's not twisted. My run is already in back, so it's waiting for me. It needs to be a knit. Take my hook, go into the run, I'm going underneath it, and then I'm pulling it right through the loop on my hook. Here's my next one, and it needs to be a purl. So what I'm going to do is I kind of pinch my stitch so that I could take my hook out, grab my next run and put it in front of that stitch, and then I'm going to put it back on my hook, making sure it's not twisted. Now right now it's twisted. Can you see that? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure it's not twisted. There we are. Go underneath the run that's in front of my stitch. And you can use your fingers if you want. Those of you who are not comfortable with crochet hooks, you can use your fingers to have that stitch jump over that run. Okay? Can you see that? So now I have a purl bump. The next stitch has to be a knit. So I'm going to just adjust my hook. I'm just bringing it around here, grabbing my run from underneath. It's the last one, and I pull it through. Whew, look at that. See, we have purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. Now the next question is, this stitch fell off, and I've fixed it, I've pulled it all the way up. Do I put it back on my right hand needle or my left hand needle? The answer is simple. Your yarn will always be coming off of the stitch that is the next one in line on your right hand needle. This is your working yarn is what I mean. This particular stitch we picked up does not have the working yarn in it yet, which means it has not been worked, which means it has to go back onto the left hand needle. Now I'm going to take my left hand needle and I'm going to go and take the stitch just like so. Can you see that? I'm going over to the right side of the stitch, if you think of it like that, and I'm placing it right back on my needle. The reason I want to make sure I place it like this onto my needle is because what that does is it lets the orientation of the stitch, the way it rests on the actual needle, is correct. So I'm not going to get a twisted stitch. So now I can carry on in pattern. So I just did a knit. I'm looking at a knit, which means I need to purl. So I could go ahead and purl the next stitch. Go ahead, knit the next stitch because that's the way it is in pattern. And here I am to another mistake. Oh my gosh, what do I do? Same thing. We drop that stitch off and fix it. I'm going to show you one more time so that way you can see how to do it. I'm just letting my working yarn fall away because I'm not going to use it, right? I want to deal with this stitch. So I'm going to take that one stitch and let it fall off of my needle. I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to begin to undo that stitch. I'm going to let it fall down the ladder, and I'm going to let it go to this point. Now let's see. So there's a purl, and now it's a knit stitch. It's a knit stitch right there. So let's pick it up from here. The next stitch after a knit stitch has to be a purl, correct? Which means the next run in my row needs to go in front of this stitch. So what do? I take my hook out, I move my run in front of that stitch, put my hook back in the stitch, make sure it's not twisted. See, I'm not twisted at all. I go underneath the run, I move to the front and pull it through that stitch. Okay? The next stitch has to be a knit, which means I'm going to adjust my hook, put it in this side of the stitch, grab underneath the next run, and pull it through. The next stitch has to be a purl, so I'm going to take my hook out, move my run in front of the stitch, put my hook back into the stitch, make sure it's not twisted, grab the run from underneath, and pull it through. Now I'm going to adjust again, put my hook on this side. My run is in back, which is perfect because I'm going to knit. I'm going to grab it from underneath, pull up. Now my working yarn is not coming through that drop stitch, which means it goes back onto my left hand needle. So I take my left hand needle and I place that stitch on there and I'm ready to go. So I can go ahead and I can purl this stitch. Now, obviously, I'm showing you examples of what would happen if you have stacked a whole bunch of mistakes, right? But what if it's just one little tiny mistake? You don't really want to have to go looking through your tool bag and find your crochet hook. Why not just fix it really quickly with your knitting needles? Let me show you how to do that. Right here, we're going to pretend that this next stitch is incorrect, okay? It is actually correct. We are pretending, so let's put our pretending caps on. Let's say that this stitch was supposed to be a knit stitch. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that stitch, I'm gonna let it drop off just one, okay? Now, I'm gonna take that run, put it to the back of that stitch, I place that stitch on my right hand needle, and then I scoop up that run. So now it looks like I have a stitch and a run, or kind of like a yarn over resting on my right hand needle, which those of you who know how to bind off, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take our left hand needle, we're going to scoop into the stitch, and we're going to have it jump up and over that run and off. So now I have a stitch I just fixed it, right? I made that stitch into a knit. Now you have to remember your working yarn is going to come off of the last stitch on your right hand needle, and this stitch does not have the working yarn onto it, which means we have to place it back onto our left hand needle and we'd be ready to go. Same thing happens if we wanted to make that actual stitch into a purl. I would go ahead, I would let it drop off, I would pull out that run, I'd place the run into the front, I would take my right hand needle, put it into the stitch, scoop up from the bottom that run. Okay, so now I have the stitch and the run. Take my left hand needle, and I find it easier to kind of grab it from behind here, the stitch. So I'm grabbing the stitch from behind, but still I'm having it leapfrog up and over that run. See that? Now I'm just going to take my left hand needle and I'm going to put that stitch back on my left hand needle once again because my working yarn is not through it and it's ready to go. Could you use your knitting needles to drop down several different rows? Absolutely. But sometimes using the crochet hook is just a better way and a better tool to be able to do that. But now you know how to fix a mistake. If you don't have a crochet hook around and it's just one simple stitch, you can use your knitting needles to do that. Do you want me to show you how to do that just one more time? Sure, I can do that. Let's go ahead. Let's knit this stitch. We're going to say this stitch needed to be a purl, so we're going to drop it off, undo it just one row. I'm going to take that run and place it in front. I'm putting the stitch on my right hand needle, then I'm scooping up the run, and now it's a matter of having the stitch leapfrog up and over that run. So I'm going to take my left hand needle, I'm going to grab that stitch, and once again I find it easier to grab it from behind, and I'm having it leapfrog up and over. Now I have that stitch there, it's a purl now, see how it's a purl? And I can place that stitch back on my left hand needle and carry on. Now let's make that stitch into a knit stitch. I'm going to drop it off, let it undo one. When I knit, I want my yarn in back, so I have to move my run in back, put the stitch onto my right hand needle, scoop up the run, and once again, have the stitch jump up and over that run and off. Place that stitch back on my left-hand needle, and I can carry on with the rest of my row. And finish off with my knit. There you go. Seed stitch is a lot of fun to do, and it's really easy to fix mistakes, and now you know how to do it with the crochet hook and your knitting needles. Please, if you like this video, smash that like button, as my kids say, and join me back here for more videos all about knitting and crochet. I'm Marley Bird, proud spokesperson for Red Heart Yarns, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye. Let's do that. One of the first rules in knitting is to never put a knot in your knitting, right? So what's the first thing I'm going to show you to do? I want you to put a knot in your knitting. Now,